welcome to a brand new spoiler review episode for Agatha All Along, wrapping up season 1 here on Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies.
Yes, as Shannon just definitely alluded to, happy Halloween to everybody who is celebrating Halloween. I'm already in Christmas mode, but shout out to all of you all who are enjoying Halloween and will enjoy Thanksgiving at some point in the next few weeks. But yes, happy Halloween.
How are you skipping Halloween?
It's not my jam anymore. Halloween or Thanksgiving are just in the way of Christmas, so I'm going to go get me a treat a day. Anyway, episode 8 and 9, Follow Me, My Friend, to Glory at the End, and then Maiden, Mother Crone. These are both directed by Ganja Montero, written by Peter Cameron, the first episode, episode 8 there, and then episode 9, Jock Schaefer and Laura Donnie handled the writing for that episode. So interesting 2 episodes to end this first season, possibly first season, maybe there is a season 2 coming, of Agatha All Along here, gentlemen. So much to dive into here. From what we see, the final trial here with Agatha and with Billy figuring out what's going on here, Jen getting to escape, Agatha's battle with death, Agatha's sacrifice, what happens to Billy, seeing him in his full Wiccan costume, and then going back in time to 1750 to see Agatha with Nicholas, and then what all that leads to in the modern time of the MCU with Billy and with Agatha. So a lot to discuss, but we're going to take it episode per episode. So we'll do episode 8 and then we'll do episode 9. So Michael, let's go to you first. Episode 8, your overall thoughts on this particular episode.
I mean, it was great. My overall thoughts, just very broadly, and this kind of applies to episode 8 and episode 9, is
okay. So do you want to do both? Do you want to do both?
I'll just go throw it out just as an overall to get things kicked off. Like, this is Marvel doing what Marvel does best. For so much of phases 4 and 5, we've had starts and stops. We've had characters show up in a movie, but we don't really know where they're going. We don't really know how it fits into the bigger picture. The multiverse is very confusing. It's very cosmic. This is what Marvel made their money on and made their fans on. They took characters that we loved, brought their stories back together, wove a very interesting story that was all ultimately, at the end of the day, based on character and emotion. And at the end of episode 9 saying, let's go find Tommy, got me excited I don't care if it's Agatha season 2, if it's Vision Quest, if it's the Children's Crusade of Young Avengers, if it's a Scarlet Witch movie. Like, I want these characters in the Marvel universe. I want to know where Jennifer Kale is flying off to. Like, there's so much here that I loved the journey. I loved the emotion. And at the end of the day, it got me jazzed. Like, I want the Maximoff family back together. So this just all across the board was great. I mean, I think that we talk a lot about particularly Marvel TV shows, but Marvel movies as well, kind of getting to the end and turning into just a CG slugfest of lots of pew pew lasers. And although we had a little bit of that, I think they really stuck the landing on this one better than most Marvel shows stick the landing.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. What do you think here, Shannon? What do you feel about these episodes 8 and 9, as a way to wrap up the first season of Agatha All Along?
I mean, I think Vogel kind of put it perfectly. Like, when the MCU does something right, this is what they're talking about. That you're able to tell, for this, I mean, a fairly insulated story.
Yeah.
That it helps to have some knowledge of WandaVision. It certainly ups your enjoyment. But even if you don't, you can kind of get on the ride pretty fast to be like, oh, okay, this is who, got it. As an MCU fan, having those connections to WandaVision was really, really satisfying.
Yeah.
And even though, like, I do understand the third act pew pew argument, that those pew pews work because of the journey that the characters you go on with them. And by the end, like, you are invested in the characters, you're invested in their stories. So, and when you're not, that you can usually point to, hey, maybe they didn't quite land the plane in terms of story and connecting with the audience. This was just a lot of fun. And by the end, where we see Agatha end up, very faithful to the comics. I mean, there is a run of Scarlet Witch that it's like, oh, okay, this is what you're doing with Billy here. And for the MCU, it 100% makes sense, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, you're referencing the 2016 Scarlet Witch run with from James Robinson and Vanessa Del Rey, which people should definitely read. Where it wasn't Billy, it was Wanda wandering with Agatha's ghost there. So yeah, I agree, guys. I love this last 2 episodes. This was a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, TV shows are interesting, right? Sometimes TV shows like The Penguin, that first episode, you're like, oh man, I'm in. I can't wait to see what's next. Some TV shows take a little bit of time to build, find their footing as they go along. I think this is one of those ones. I liked every episode, but it certainly got stronger as the season went along because of what they'd done to lay the groundwork with these characters in the first few episodes. So that when we get to these last 2 episodes, which by the way were pretty emotionally moving episodes of what was going on with these characters, we're invested in these characters. We're invested in their journeys. We're invested in what they want. And coming off of that really heartbreaking last episode, you really had to meet it at that level. And I thought episode 8 and 9 absolutely did that. Fantastic performances, great direction. But I also like the twists and turns in the story and that they didn't cop out on making her a villain. She is a villain. Yes, you may like her. She may be charming. You may worship at the Queen, Catherine Hahn, but she kills witches, okay? And so that's important to remember to battle. Yeah, I love my son. Who doesn't love their son? Mafia people love their children, but they still kill. So these are the things that I like. There's a challenge here. It's a very mature approach to the story, and that Wiccan isn't necessarily himself free of the occasional murder, shall we say, inadvertent or not. So I like that these are challenging characters that we as an audience have to kind of meet at their level and have conversations with ourselves about. And I thought they really nailed it to lead us into this journey with Agatha and Billy to find Tommy, which I thought was really well done as well. So the way we're going to break this thing down with episode 8 and 9 is we're going to take it into sections. Episode 8 will be 3 sections. Episode 9 will be 2 sections, and we'll work through these things. I usually tell or say some of the actions within those sections, and then these 2 gentlemen add a lot of flourish there to what we're discussing. So here we go. Follow me, my friend, to glory at the end. Exactly. We opened with Rio taking Alice in a scene that feels like an homage, or talking to Alice, rather, in a scene that feels like an homage to Seven the Seal, negotiating with death, claiming they were cheated or just about to live a fuller life before she was taken. And Rio says, no, you're a protection witch. You died protecting someone, so you have completed your circle. You will not be a ghost. The witches and the Wiccan are dealing with the live witches, rather, and Wiccan, Billy, are dealing with Lilia's death as Jen pounds the door and Billy fully takes in the loss of Lilia. Agatha is out there on the witch's road. She seems shaken and confronts Rio. Rio calls Billy an abomination, that he is disrupting the sacred balance. And what he wants from the road is a violation, which is kind of another hint, if you go back and rewatch these episodes, that he had created this road, which we find out a little bit later. Death sees him as a thief, but Agatha susses out that Death, can't kill him unless Billy turns himself in. And Agatha promises to deliver Billy at the road's end if Rio will stop stalking her every move. When I die, a long time from now, she continues, I don't want to see your face. That's a harsh breakup with an ex, reminiscent of something from Love is Blind last night. They walk the road without Rio and end up back at the start with their shoes. This is a really powerful moment, seeing the pairs of shoes of the witches and Sharon, who aren't going to come back here. And Billy is really affected by this. And Billy says, screw the road. And as he puts his boot on in defiance, the 3 of them wake up in body bags in a cold morgue-like room with purple lights, clearly inferring they're in something in Agatha's place. Michael, your thoughts on these opening scenes all the way leading to Billy being defiant and then them ending up in this room? What do you think about how they started this particular episode?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I loved kind of going back to Alice. I love this scene. Look, I'm a huge fan of the Sandman, and to me, Death in the Sandman is probably one of my favorite personifications of death. And this scene played very similar to one of those scenes where somebody realizes they're dead, they're talking to death, they have the conversation. I wanted more time. I wanted this. Rio's version of death is definitely creepier than the Sandman version of death, who's pretty adorable and sweet. So I like the play on it. She's a little bit creepy, but there's still, I would say, a little bit of heart. You know what I mean? Pointing out to Alice. And I do love that Alice said the same thing that every single fan of Agatha All Along watching the show said when she died. You're like, are you kidding me? She literally just got the curse off of her and you killed her. How can you do that, Jacques Schaefer? And for Alice in the show to be like, I literally just got the curse off. There's so much more. And for Death to just be like, look, you're a protection witch. You did your job. You died doing what you do. And then they like went off. And I just thought it was really simple, but it was really cool. And honestly, if they just bring Aubrey Plaza in to whatever Mystic Marvel movie they want to from now on and have her show up with that death mask, I am on board. You know, I think then jumping over to Jen being so broken up about Lilia and like that whole thing happening and just kind of picking up right on that moment. Again, just such a great performance there. Just really, you're feeling every emotion on her face. And then cutting to this Agatha and Rio scene, man, this is like the stuff we have been waiting for. I mean, these two, I mean, I will say, and I've seen a lot of other people say this too, like one of my few quibbles by the end of this show is I actually wanted a lot more on the Rio and Agatha backstory. We've picked up a couple things here throughout these back 2 episodes, but by the time we see them first meet in episode 9, their relationship has already gone down a road. So we're kind of seeing the thing that broke that relationship up. But yeah, to have just all the tension between the two of them here and to have Rio finally say what a lot of us kind of assumed, which is, you know, you've been distracting me from this kid, but this kid, he broke the rules. I mean, in the same way that Doctor Strange did at the end of Multiverse of Madness, like, you as a living soul, you don't hop into a dead body. It's not what you do. And really calling him that and then kind of just laying out. I mean, this is, as Shannon said, I believe, with the Penguin episode this week, you know, when you have an exposition scene, that's information the audience needs to know what is at stake, what's going on. And sometimes those scenes can fall flat, but this had so much emotion between the two of them. So the information that, Billy hopped in a dead body, that's an abomination. I don't like it, but I can't take him because he's basically a hitchhiking spirit. So if I take this body, he's just going to hitchhike into another spirit and reincarnate. And so I need him to willingly do that. And then Agatha just being like, look, fine, do what you want to do. Like just the whole interplay between them. But most importantly, I think there's this one line where Rio kind of says, you know, when Agatha kind of pretends that she doesn't care about Billy, says she's known him like 10 minutes, like it's no big deal. And Rio says, which is important, like it just kind of gives a little bit of context to every move that Agatha has made when it comes to Billy, which is, you know, we said a lot early on, we're like, oh, does she think that this kid is maybe her son? Does she think this? And now we know that that's not the case, but Rio calls her on it and says, look, you care about this kid. I watch you as closely as you watch anybody else. And this kid you care about. And then she actually almost says, when you go back and rewatch it, she says, you are walking the road with another woman's son that doesn't really, and she's about to say doesn't really exist, that you are walking on this made up thing that isn't even real with this kid that's not your own. And just like Agatha yelling stop at her, like all of this, like it was just, I went back and watched the scene a few times because just watching the two of them was so great. And then one of the small details I told Shannon last night I absolutely loved is after Agatha kind of makes the deal and says, I'll get him to sacrifice himself willingly and then leave me the fuck alone and I don't ever want to see your face again. And Rio says, okay. She just walks up to what is definitely a backdrop on the set of Agatha All Along that is supposed to look real and just actually cuts it. They don't do some cool Marvel visual effect where it's all smoky magic. She literally just cuts a backdrop and walks through it. And somehow the simplicity of that is so much more affecting than if they had done a big visual effects shot where she like sucked herself into a void. Like it was so simple and just like creepy and cool. And I loved it. And then, they're walking on this road. And again, watching everyone's reaction, particularly Agatha's, after you've watched the end of the next episode and knowing the context, all of Agatha's reactions are great. But them getting there and coming back to the shoes and just being like, what are we going to do? And Agatha yells at Billy at one point, and there's like a rawness to her voice when she's like, if you don't know the answer, shut the fuck up, basically. Because she's actually kind of getting stressed out at this point. Like, she's made this deal with death. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know where they're going. And even Jen, like when Agatha's like, well, let's just do the road again. And Jen is like, the fuck you say? Like, just tensions are running so high here. And then, yeah, the shot where Billy steps into the shoe and the camera just like swoops down to get to the next scene we're going to talk about. Just all great stuff here. I mean, again, going back and rewatching some of these scenes contextually, once you understand what the road really is, makes it even better. But even for the first viewing, like, I was in right away on all of this.
Yeah. What about you, Shannon? What do you think of these scenes here before we get into the room and then the battle between Agatha, Rio, and Billy?
I mean, love that we opened with Allian, that we get, as an audience, we got to say goodbye to her because her passing was very, very sudden. But yeah, I mean, like thinking about the comparisons to Sandman, whether it be Kirby Howell Baptiste's interpretation in the Netflix series or Kat Dennings in the Audible series, the way that death approaches people that have passed is this very nurturing, like, yeah, sorry, like this, that was it. Whereas Aubrey Plaza's is more like the tow truck driver who shows up after you've been in a car accident. Like you're not hurt, and like the moment, like, oh yeah, I have to have more time. Like, yeah, if I had a nickel, as they're connecting your damaged automobile that is undrivable. Like, you could tell Aubrey Plaza doesn't necessarily take any joy in this. Like, this is just my job. Like, this is what I am supposed to do. You are a thing I'm supposed to do. And like, as we progress in the episode, again, it's not like you owe me. It's like, look, he broke the rules, man. You can't do that. And when she says to Agatha, you have gotten more special treatment than anyone.
Yeah,
she's right. I mean, we find out to the degree later, but she is right. But I mean, from Agatha's point of view, it's like, no, you took my kid. So the whole setup is just really, really great. I think Agatha All Along will be a great rewatch next Halloween to go from just one episode into the other, because you will get that moment of Lilia saying bye to Jen and straight into Sashir Zamata's, banging on the door, like, no. Like, that's all great. The scene between Kathryn Hahn and Aubrey Plaza, I mean, that back and forth, that is just, I mean, they released that in a clip yesterday during the day before the episode dropped. And it was just crackling. I'm like, these are just two great performers who have been given this incredible backstory to kind of basically load the gun as they're kind of going back and forth. And the moment where she says, when I die, years and years from now, a long time from now, I never want to see your face again. And the hurt that Aubrey Plaza is able to convey with just a kind of look to the ground and look back up, like, okay, like that is just so satisfying to an audience. The moment that they realize that the Witch's Road is a circle, like that is, I mean, there are so many stories that use this same trope. And when it is done well, even though it's a trope that has been used in the past, when it is done well, like it was done here for me, that is so like, oh God, like we're done, but we're not done. What are we going to do? And then as they wake up in that, I got X-Mansion vibes for a moment. I was like, oh my God, are they in the X-Mansion? No. It's just,
it's jumped the shark. And then Patrick Stewart rolls in the wheelchair and he's like, welcome. And we're like, what the fuck is going on?
I got excited. But again, them waking up for that final challenge, all great stuff.
Yeah, again, it's just a fascinating show because the opening is touching with Alice. And as I mentioned, Seventh Seal, if you guys haven't seen the classic film Seventh Seal, that whole film is about negotiating with death. And everyone is at different, because the plague is in the Middle Ages and the plague is running through the Middle Ages. And everyone is negotiating with death from different angles and different points of views and different situations. And it's a fascinating film. And I sense that there were shades of that in this back and forth with Alice and Rio, which I thought was great, because death's not supposed to take it personal. It's just its job. It does what it does. And I like that, although there are moments when when Rio and Agatha are going at it, that's about their toxic codependent relationship. That's not about their job. It is the reason for the battle is the job, but what they're doing is something completely separate from what her job actually is. And the irony that Agatha is the one who's been feeding death for centuries, as we find out in the 9th episode, it's ironic that they have this issue with each other simply because she took her child. It's her job. So there's a lot of these things that work in multiple levels with this relationship. And when, as you said, Shannon, when those two get to go at it as actresses, it is so much fun to watch. And the writing here, again, can't stress it. Peter Cameron, I think, did a wonderful job in this episode writing these back and forths, really giving you some layers to their exchanges and seeing the reasons on both sides, which makes it an even more interesting conversation to watch. I do want to say, she says something about the sacred balance, which is kind of what's in the Infinity Gauntlet with the cosmic balance with Thanos. So I don't know if that was a little bit of an allusion to all that kind of stuff. So we will see when it's over. And the circle thing makes all the sense in the world because, of course, that's what will frustrate you the most to make a daring move is feeling like you got to do it all over again. So Billy losing his control for a moment makes all the sense there. Okay, let's move on. After they verbally battle, Jen realizes that it was Agatha who bound her magic for 100 years because she was a mercenary. She didn't know who was going to walk through. It just happened to be Jen. And this pisses off Jen to no end. And she invokes an unbinding spell and reclaims her magic. And here, as Shannon was saying, Sashir Zamata here really brings some great work in this episode. And this cry, that is a deep, deep cry from within her of a person who is feeling her power again after not having it for 100 years and feeling the joy and pain of that loss, but also the joy of getting it back. So it was a really powerful moment from her, I thought. And then she disappears. And then Agatha must now hand Billy to Rio, but instead she goes deep into Billy's brain to get him to reveal where Tommy is. We see this backyard pool that is outside Wanda's Westview Hex. Some teens are pranking their friend into an accidental drowning, and that's the body that Billy chose to put Tommy in. And then Billy disappears, but we do see on Tommy's shoes the light blue and white collar combo, so alluding to what will eventually be the speedster there. Agatha is all alone now and plants a lock of her son's hair in a floor crack as the time is running out, but along with a dandelion seed, which we will see referenced in episode 9, waters it with her tears, and new life is born. This stops the timer, and as the walls cave in, she only barely gets away, runs out through the basement doors into a storm, kind of like a little bit like Wizard of Oz, and then boom, she's confronting Rio. They battle. It is pretty brutal, and just when it looks like Agatha's about to get beat, Billy shows up in full Wiccan gear, knocks Rio back. Billy gives Agatha a lot of his power to restore her magic, and to her credit, she doesn't drain him. I don't know if it's because she loves him or because she's learning. I don't know. They battle death for a bit, but realize they can't win, so Rio makes them an offer. One stays, one goes. Billy offers himself up. Agatha accepts that, is about to walk away in full villain mode, but then Billy goes into her mind and says, "Is this how your son died?" Dirty trick, but it worked. This stops Agatha. She walks up to Rio and plants a fat one on her lips there. No mealy mouth gay kiss here. This is full on gay kiss. Way to go, Disney. This causes Agatha to rapidly decay and fall slowly backwards, kind of like Lilia in episode 7. And she is buried in the ground with bright colored mushrooms on the grass above her. Rio leaves reluctantly, and Billy takes off in his Subaru, which kind of undercuts the moment a little bit. And he heads home. His parents question his scars, but apparently not for long, as he heads up to his room, looks around, and then just like Chaz Palminteri in The Usual Suspects, when he realizes that Kevin Spacey is Kaiser Soze, he sees all the clues on the wall and realizes that he's the one who built the Witch's Road, and we hear Agatha's cackle behind him. So, Shannon, your thoughts on these sections here, this battle in the room, and then what we lead to out there in the yard with Agatha, Rio, and Billy.
Yeah, Sashir Zamata didn't get a ton to do, but what she did get to do was fantastic.
Yeah.
Even flashing back just to the previous section when Agatha says, I really didn't think you were going to make it this far. I thought it was going to be, my money was going to be on Lilia, but also the fact that, oh no, this truth, this betrayal that she did 100 years ago might come to light. I mean, to see it happen, like you were the one who did this.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, that was a great moment that I wish we could have had a little more of. Just because like you would like to see what were the circumstances, other than the fact like, hey man, I just needed a paycheck. I didn't know it was going to be you. Yeah. I mean, that was a great little moment. And I do agree, John, that cry that she made, that, you know, getting this feeling that she hasn't had in 100 years, but also you took this from me. You stole this from me for a century. That was awesome. The filmmaking that they did with Billy trying to find Tommy. Oh my gosh, this was so well done. Yeah. This is the moment when I was watching this morning that I stopped taking notes, because I'm just like, all right, I'm not enjoying this as much as I can because I'm trying to jot down observations. But I just sat there and watched it. And the moment where, as Billy's talking about what this kid is going through, like, you know, it was a prank. He's going to die. There's not going to be anyone there to love him. And the moment where he realizes, am I killing this boy so my brother can live? Like, oh my God, that was just absolutely heart-wrenching. He vanishes. We see the crack in the floor where there is that little bit of dirt. Agatha does her incantation and using Nikki's hair. And then the moment, like we get the same moment in episode 9 where it's like, no, I need more time. Like, and going into that fight, so much fun. This is the moment where we get to see Aubrey Plaza kind of in full villain mode, but not in her employee's death, but as a, you know, you did some bad shit to me. It's time to pay the piper.
Like a broken lover almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is personal. This has nothing to do with my job. Yeah. Watching Joe Locke come in dressed up as Wiccan. I mean, that's one of those Marvel moments that when you get it done right, it's like, oh, this is so satisfying. And the moment that Agatha is able to kind of cut off the siphoning of his power, where she willingly does it, watching the two of them, her in that great costume that she had from WandaVision, that fight, all just a lot of fun. But also the realization, like, we ain't gonna win. Like, we can't beat this. And it seems like, she is leaning into, I'm a bad guy, I'm a covenless witch. Yeah, take him. And then we get to hear Billy's thoughts. And the moment that she's like, all right, she is turning the corner as a person and as a witch. And then watching her kind of lay down in that bed of purple flowers, beautifully done.
Yeah. Well, what about the realization there in the room, Shannon, heading?
Right.
It was,
awesome. I mean, Usual Suspects is the way. I mean, that is definitely an homage to Usual Suspects. But again, when you do it well, it doesn't matter that you've seen it before. Because I'm like, this was a great trope. She sees the Lorna Wu poster. She sees the Wicked Witch of the West figurine. You see the shoes. And it's that realization of, oh my gosh, did I do this? And the whole time where, and I didn't catch this last night. Vogel was the one who told me you're so much like your mother, and how he's able to warp reality. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. So that's all just super well done.
I love how you guys cheat before this review by talking to each other. It's a bunch of bullshit. All right, Michael, your thoughts here. Your thoughts on...
He was sitting on my couch next to me, which you would be too if you lived here.
There should be things between you two, so you can't see. Michael, your thoughts on the scene in the room here down below in the X-Men room or the morgue area, and then what happens out there in this battle, this culmination of anger between the two of them out there in the yard, and Billy showing up there as strongly as he does.
Well, one of the things that's great about this show that's been great throughout is, despite all of the amazing, dramatic, emotional, Marvel comic booky shit, this show's really funny. I mean, whether it is Jen in the stairs with Billy in the last scene going, when he's like, so Agatha's ex is death? And Jen's like, yeah, that makes sense. Or here, when Jen is struggling to get out of the bag and Billy jumps up to help her and Agatha's like, don't steal her struggle.
Don't steal her struggle. That was a great line.
It's a great line. It's a great, so like we, obviously we're focusing on all of like the great, awesome, meaty, emotional stuff. But part of what makes this show work is that Catherine Hahn's Agatha particularly, but all of the characters just there's great comic timing. There's some great lines that just take those tense moments and just like make you crack a smile. And that's what makes the ride so enjoyable. Everything here, super great. Wizard of Oz is obviously a big piece thematically that they have woven throughout of this. But by the time we get to the end, I mean, look, Jen didn't know who bound her, but ultimately Jen took her power. The road didn't give Jen power. Jen took her power back. Lilia embraced her power in the last episode. Alice did die, but before she died, she got her own curse off of her. She broke the curse herself. And so seeing Jen take that power back from Agatha, she just needed the information. And once she got the information, again, Catherine Hahn killing it with the comic timing. Just her face of, I didn't, this is really awkward. I didn't know it was you. Followed up by, as you guys both said, an amazingly great performance as she is unbinding herself. Just a beautiful, beautiful moment. Now, then when we get to the Agatha and Billy moment here, Agatha's motivations, what I love about this, and it's all very muddy, but and sometimes that can be really confusing as a viewer, but I love Agatha's muddiness. She tells Rio, I'm going to serve you up Billy. And Rio, and Rio straight up says, like, I don't want him to do the same thing to his brother. So she's like, yeah, I'm going to serve him up. I'm going to serve him up. Then she straight up tells Billy, Rio has it out for you, but let's find Tommy. And like, maybe this is all part of her master plan, but also it's the opposite of what Rio wants. So you're like, no, like Agatha does kind of care about Tommy too, and does kind of care about Billy. So in this moment, Agatha is not necessarily working to her own advantage. She is doing something that Billy really wants. Now, you could argue she's doing it because this is the only way to get off the road. And once he's off the road, she is going to betray him. But with all of Agatha's motivations when it comes to Billy, there's like multiple layers happening at the same time, which makes it so interesting. The second she said, let's go get Tommy, I was like, here we fucking go. I am all in. And again, Billy did this entire journey. He literally created the road so that he could get his brother back, and he had the power the entire time. So again, just like harkening back to the Wizard of Oz of it all, like Billy didn't know how to do it, but he had the power to do what he did from day one. But he needed a mentor, and Agatha in this moment steps into the role that she is basically going to play for hopefully the foreseeable future of the Marvel Universe as Billy's mentor. And Shannon's right. The way they shot this entire thing, her guiding him through it, just everything that's happening, so interesting, so cool. Layering in Vision and Wanda's dialogue from the end of WandaVision as they said goodbye to Billy and Tommy, and then that great line where Vision says, we've said goodbye to each other before, and Wanda says, we'll say hello to each other again, which we're now seeing Billy do with his brother. Like, just all of it. I was like, fuck, this is Marvel candy at this point, and I am eating it up. And then, seeing Tommy, seeing this kid who is going to go through the same journey that Billy did, but you're already seeing, and this does harken back a little bit to the comics, William Kaplan grew up in a loving family in a suburban town. And when Billy inhabited that body, he inhabited a lovely body from a loving family that really cared about him. He has magical abilities, so he was able to tap into stuff. So although he did have a bumpy and then on top of all of that, Lilia put a sigil on him because he was going to need time without other witches coming after him and everything. Tommy gets none of that. Tommy doesn't have magic, which is why he couldn't put himself in a body. And they've already sort of hinted at Tommy doesn't have a family that like the body that Tommy inhabits isn't landing in as smooth a family situation as Billy did. So again, just already setting up as a fan of the Marvel Universe and the way it connects, I'm already like, give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. And then Agatha using Nikki's hair and the dandelion seed that's in her locket to solve that final bit. She finally gets the soil, she plants the thing, and first of all, the best line that she says is when Billy does ask, as you guys mentioned, am I killing this kid to bring my brother back? And then he disappears, and Agatha says, no, Billy, sometimes boys just die. And when particularly after you watch episode 9, you're just like, fuck you. That combined with her desperately pleading in the challenge, I need more time, and knowing what that means in episode 9, just like great A++ writing. And then, coming out of the storm cellar of the basement in Westview, looking like she's just stepped into a twister from Wizard of Oz and facing her version of a Wicked Witch. The thing that's interesting about Rio and Agatha and their relationship is, from episode 1, Rio's been trying to kill Agatha, but as opposed to a toxic ex who's like, if I can't have you, I'm going to kill you, I think Rio has been trying to kill Agatha for hundreds of years so that Agatha will be with her. Like Rio's just I'm
confused. You're saying that's not something a toxic ex would do, to kill someone to make sure they can't be with anybody else, they can only be with them?
When you are death and you're like, you're going to die at some point anyways, and then you and me can be together, why don't I just do this? And you've already lived hundreds of years. I've been waiting for you, babe. Come home. I'm not arguing that it's like the healthiest of relationships, but I'm saying I understand death's motivation here. Well, and I also think, because you had mentioned before, like Agatha definitely hates Death for taking Nikki. But when she says to Rio in the previous scene, leave me the fuck alone, it is because Death has been coming after Agatha, like, babe, I want you, babe. And she's like, get the fuck out of here, I hate you. So just a really, really fun dynamic between the two of them. Also, fucking love the Westview residents who have been through the shit. When they're like, is this happening again? And he's like, I don't know. Like, they are just like, why haven't we moved yet? Westview has been through it, which I loved. And yes, Shannon, as to Rocha's chagrin, Shannon and I were watching this together last night, and when Wiccan showed up, we both audibly cheered. It was great. Like, Wiccan showing up, great Marvel reveal, and then the whole thing between the three of them, and then Billy. And this is also, the Billy Agatha relationship is MCU specific. Like you guys said, they took a lot of the Wanda Agatha relationship when she was a spirit and have kind of moved it over. But Billy having this really amazing heart and believing in people that no one else believes in. In the comics, it was really his mom. When all the Avengers and the X-Men were like, we really should kill Wanda, Billy's like, no. And here, he willingly gives Agatha his power, which no witch in their right mind would ever do, and trusts her to cut it off, which she does. And as far as we can tell, this is maybe one of the first times she's ever done that in hundreds and hundreds of years. But then again, because this whole relationship is muddy, instantly then says, all right, he gave himself up, you can have him. And the hurt on his face, and Johnny said it was a dirty move for Billy to talk in Agatha's mind. I don't think that was a ploy. I don't think he was like, this is how I'm going to get to Agatha. He literally is like, is this what happened to Nikki? You're doing to me the same thing you did to your son. I get it.
Asking the question.
He's asking the question. He is just, this isn't a, how dare you? I know there's good in you, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I know you can hear me. Is this how you did? Is this what you did to Nikki? And him just saying that, you just watch Catherine Hahn's face turn around, just change. And then she makes this sacrifice and makes out. And I will say, because you, Johnny, you are right. It's a super gay kiss. But
it's super gay.
And I am all about representation. And the more queer couples that I see in all content, I am super happy about it. I love seeing queer couples. I love seeing non-binary people. I love seeing trans people. What's great about this relationship is when they kissed, I forgot it was a queer kiss.
Yeah.
It didn't even occur. It didn't even occur to me in the moment that I was watching a lesbian kiss, watching two women kiss, because I was so invested in this specific story and this specific relationship. I was like, oh my God, it's Agatha and Rio kissing. And that's really what we should all aspire to, is that we forget about it completely because we're so invested in these characters. The death was great.
One thing before you go forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the comments, people are going to come in here going, see, Rocha, you don't have to highlight it all the time. I'm only stressing it because Disney has mealy-mouthed their way through it multiple times. So when they finally commit to it, I do want to highlight it. Not because it's a gay kiss, because they finally committed to it, which they had failed to do in numerous formats, animation and live action. So I just want to make sure before the commentators lose their mind. So go ahead, sorry.
I will say on my straight best friend's behalf that I am very happy that he always brings it up and always challenges companies to do more and make the relationships more realistic, because I appreciate that, because I want to have so many queer relationships on TV and trans relationships on TV that we can all forget about it. But if people like John don't call it out all the time, it's not going to happen. So thank you.
Proceed.
Really loved, I mean, little stuff that I loved. Wiccan walking out of Westview with all the Westview residents around him, putting his hood on in the exact same way that Wanda does when she walks away from the Westview residents in WandaVision. It is like almost exact, and you're like, like mother, like son. Love him getting home and how worried his parents were about him. Love finding out that they were only on the Witch's Road for less than 24 hours. And yeah, then when he goes in his room, absolute Usual Suspects moment, but just such a good job. Like this show did everything hiding in plain sight. Death was hiding in plain sight. William being Billy was hiding in plain sight. All of the props. He has the moon lamps that are in the nice house with the wine episode. He has one hanging in his room. The leaves, a lot of the stuff was in the slumber party. It's all just been in his room the entire time. It wasn't hidden. If you go back and watch the other episode that takes place in his room, it's all there for you to see. And so as you're watching him put the pieces together and slowly realize, oh shit, he made the entire Witch's Road himself. Just like with Usual Suspects, there is just this thrill that builds in you that in this leads up to the boo. But like, and I will say, I saw, I was reading, maybe it was IGN, I forget which review it was, but they were like, the reveal at the end of this episode was so good that I almost wish they hadn't put 8 and 9 back to back. It would have been great to end on that episode and have to wait a week. Also, I was thrilled that I could be like, fuck it, let's keep going. But like, it was such a good reveal that you almost wanted a week for all of us to be like, holy shit. But really, really well done on their parts.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a number of designs within there in the room that I thought worked really well from the movie posters. I mean, we saw the little Wizard of Oz dolls. And I wonder if him holding the Wicked Witch of the West there is a little bit of a Wicked reference as it's about to come out. I don't know. The timing, the leaves there was really interesting. All that stuff I thought worked really well throughout, you know. And I like this. I like what happened in the room. I like that Agatha is challenged here to create life because Agatha has always taken life. So there was something really powerful in that moment, in the last moment, using her son, which is the last thing she like legitimately loved until Billy and Tommy showed up, I imagine, using that and the dandelion seed, which we find out in episode 9 is something they did together, blowing dandelions up, all of that having a real power for her to like kind of come to terms with the fact that she can create life as strongly as she can destroy life. And so there's something positive in that. And that's what leads her out. The battle here, I thought worked really well. And all I could think about was how terrible the Secret Invasion finale was in terms of the battle. And you know what I'm saying? And I was like, please don't give me that. And also, honestly, in my personal opinion, I'm not speaking for Mike or Shannon, but the WandaVision finale battle with Agatha and Wanda wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be. This one felt better. Like the fact you can hear it happening. So you're seeing Billy's reaction in the garden house as he's climbing up to see what's going on. I like that. We don't need to always see it. The allusion to it, the bright lights and all of that, we get what's happening. So we're invested in it. And then when they did show the sequences, I thought they all worked well. And God love that stunt woman who's playing Death, because she was ripped through that house twice. That's a hell of a thing to hit. But the moment we can debate, and I think it'd be fun to talk about down the road multiple times, and I'm sure people have different opinions. Did he say that to her to make her stop, or was he asking the question? So you can go either way with it, which I think makes that an interesting moment for Agatha, because was Agatha ready to walk away? Was she really sacrificing Billy for all the talks about loving him and what have you? Was she really ready to walk away? Because it looked like she was. And did Billy saying this, is that the thing that really stopped her, or was she always going to stop and turn around and help him? I don't know. So it's a fascinating moment there in the scene between them that I like scenes that are up for debate. I think it's always fun to discuss it and see where you land on it. I thought that was good. But the ending here where Rio reluctantly left, I thought was good too, because there's a piece of her that I think wanted to take Billy because, as she said earlier, he's an abomination. And I also think it's really sweet too, Michael and Shannon, earlier in the episode, which we didn't mention, Rio says to Agatha, why do you let them believe the things about you when you know the truth? And she said, because the truth is harder to face. I'd rather them believe that I traded my son in for the Darkhold than you took him from me. Right. And then there's a real power in that I think is going to come up in episode 9. So seeing that here in their interactions, I thought was really essential in their back and forths. Yeah,
I've seen some people on Twitter kind of challenging that line because they're like, well, it's not like I think there was an expectation when she said, because what really happened was so much worse that we were going to find out that she did something horrible. And they're like, well, it wasn't worse. Like, your son died. People have kids die all the time. But I think for Agatha, the begging for someone's life and not having the control to protect them, she's such a person who doesn't want to show any vulnerability. She'd rather have people think that she willingly did something because she was this evil, powerful person than that she was vulnerable and couldn't save her own son. To her, to us, we're like, that happens. But to her, I'd rather have everyone fearing for their life because I gave my son's soul to Mephisto than know that I was actually that hurt and out of control. To me, that was really meaty and I liked it.
Yeah. One is active agency. One is something taken from you. And there's more power in it being active. I totally understand that. And I have to believe that only non-parents would say losing a child isn't that bad. It is.
Nobody's saying it isn't that bad. What she actually says is what really happened was more horrible or more awful or whatever. But whatever the phrasing is, it is sort of like some people were feeling there was the expectation. But again, just like with WandaVision, now they did mention Mephisto's name, but they did a great job of the audience. Like with the moment that Jen Kale says to Billy, nobody knows what happened to Nick Scratch. Like, did she sell his soul? Did she make a deal with Mephisto? Did she trade him for the Darkhold? Like, there's all of these things that they led us down this road so that we believe that Agatha did horrible things. So that when we get to where we're about to get to, it's just all the more heartbreaking.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't want to leave this episode without also highlighting a very funny moment when she mentioned Jen's last name, saying it's the worst lettuce you can have or whatever. I thought
that was... it's like eating a doily.
There you go. All right, let's move on to episode 9, Mother Maiden Crone. This takes us back to 1750 Salem, where we see Agatha giving birth here, but not before begging for more life for her child as death shows up. This is also a different version of death than we've seen before. Much more quieter, much more put together here, and looks like she has an incredible amount of sympathy for what Agatha is going through, but says she can only promise her time. But how much time, Agatha does not know. Agatha, their son, then after he's born, she says, I made you from scratch. This was not anything else. I made you from scratch. You're real. And so we see her and her son eventually become this 2-person con man team that helps Agatha suck the life out of these witches. We also see them really bonding in these beautiful mother-son moments and connecting. She's raising him. He's the one that comes up with the early version of the Witches Road song with different lyrics, which I thought was fascinating to see as well. She is a villain, though, and I want people not to forget this. She is sucking the life out of these witches and killing them. You could say, well, they got suckered. Sure, but she's still killing them. So I think that's important to remember. And I appreciate Marvel not going the redemption route that Star Wars always likes to go in. Keep them villainous, for God's sakes. Let's see. And just when Nikki is getting a bit tired of the scam game, it seems like in that one scene where he's running out there, they stop on the road at night. And as he is sleeping there, he passes away in the night, gets up, gives his mom a kiss. And Rio comes calling, and Rio waves him over, and they walk out. Agatha wakes up to realize that her son has passed. And I think really smartly, we see it from a distance, and we hear the wails of Agatha as she's realizing the death of her son, because that's the truth in life. We never know how much time we have with anybody, whether we birth them or we are family or friends. We just never know. And so I thought that was really powerful. And I thought the kid kissing Agatha, I'm not gonna lie, I started crying. That was really deep and moving to have that little moment. So let's stop there. Michael, your thoughts on these opening scenes here with Agatha, with her son, with death, and what it leads to there at the end with Nikki passing.
Well, so since when we see Rio, Agatha already begs her and says, "My love, please," whatever. So I'm like, oh, okay. These two have already had a relationship, and this is 1750. The Salem witch trials were like 1690 something. So like what we're seeing here is about 60 years or so after the events that we saw in WandaVision.
Right.
So I'm curious, and this is where they didn't give us a lot of information, and I want to know more at some point. I hope we get more of the story that somewhere either leading up to Agatha killing her whole coven and her mom, or between that and this pregnancy is when this whole relationship happened with death, because as soon as Nikki dies, that's where it's like, bitch, I don't want to date you no more. So, so I really am curious as to all of that. But for the purposes of what's important to Agatha, and I think, I think a show is great when it doesn't answer everything. And I think a show is great when it gives us the stuff that's the most important. So starting with Nikki's birth, and then rather than giving me a bunch of information, spending the majority of the first part of this episode. I mean, Johnny, you just went through the description of what happened from the birth all the way to her, to Nikki dying. And it's not that much. Like what we really spent the majority of this part of the show on was just these beautiful shots of Agatha and Nikki loving each other. And that was really effective. When Nikki's like, why do we kill why can't we just hang out with witches? Why can't we hang with witches and they protect us? And she's like, because they'll kill us. And you just see, like, John's right. Like, I love that they make no bones about it. They don't have Agatha step into that circle of protection with those witches after Nikki is born and the witches are mean to her or find out what her name is and try and kill her first. She straight up walks in, they're like, we're going to take care of you, and she smirks at them and takes their power. Like, it is, they make no bones about it. She is bad. She's going to do this. And her son knows what she does and accepts her anyway and loves her anyway. And I think that's key, both to why he's so important to her and also why the Billy and Agatha relationship works so well later on. And then, yes, as soon as Nikki started singing The Witch's Road and they started singing it together, and you realize that this whole song was a con, and then you're like, oh, the title of this series is absolutely correct because it was Agatha all along. Like, she created the whole legend of the Witch's Road, which is now this huge thing in 2024 where everyone believes that it's real and it's this thing. This is just what she did to lure witches. Like, that is just the writing on that. Like, I'm like, come on, this is gold right here. This is so good. And then you start to realize, like, that, the Witch's Road was nothing until Billy Maximoff came along, which we'll get to in the Billy and Agatha scene. But yes, then when they go to sleep and Rio shows up, and it's then Rio shows up, and at no point do we see the scary death face. She stays pleasant, Rio, for the little boy. But when she tells him to go back and kiss his mom goodbye, that was rough. And then the two of them walk off, and I agree with you, Johnny, that I like that they pulled away to the long shot. But before they pull away to the long shot, they stay on Agatha.
Oh, right. Yes.
Trying to wake Nikki up just long enough to rip your heart out.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, Nikki, and she starts kind of like shaking him, and you start to see realization dawn before they cut away. And it's like, it's the exact right edit, because it's just like, it's just a little bit more heartbreaking staying on it for that split second longer.
Yeah. And in some fun way, Agatha wouldn't want you to see her crying deeply about the loss of her child. It'd be better if you were far away, which I kind of like the show doing. Shannon, your thoughts on these opening scenes here? Mother and son coming together, mother battling death for more time with her son, but also the whole time being afraid of how much time she has with her son, probably every night going to bed, wondering if he's going to be waking up the next day, and then running these cons and killing all of these witches. As Michael said, the forest witches, there's witches in those cabins, all that stuff that's happening. What did you think of all of that leading to Nikki's death?
I mean, again, great setup. Aubrey Plaza in this sort of green gown and hood that she has on just looks stunning and just is so part of like that is the Green Witch right there. Like, yes, she is death, but this is the natural course of life right here. And so having that pleasant version is probably a lot easier for people to be escorted to death rather than having the skull face. You know, a kid dying in childbirth in the 18th century, I imagine that was not that uncommon.
That's standard, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So with Agatha pleading, like, please, not yet, let him live. And she's like, all I can give you is time. And the fact that she doesn't tell her how much time she has means every day she is going to do everything for her son.
Yeah.
And hopefully gaining more powers. Like, maybe there's something I can do. I love the con. Like, I thought that was so much fun. Because at first when she approaches those witches in the woods, it's like, is this an active con or did this come to you? The moment, again, it's a little design thing, but you see on the stones that make up the circle, there's sort of a yellow pulsing energy. As Agatha steps in, it changes color. It looked blue, but I mean, it very much could have been purple. But that moment she steps in, you see that smirk on her face, like, oh, this was the plan the whole time. Getting to see how Nikki steals that bell, and that's what brings a bunch of witches over. Bam, we've got you too. And then as Nikki gets older, he starts to understand what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
And like this probably isn't the great, like, we can kill more witches tomorrow. Like today, let's not do that today. How about we just have some food? Them coming up with the song, The Windy Road. I was like, oh, this is really, really sweet. This is just nice character bonding between mother and son. And again, when Nikki wakes up in the middle of the night, and visually, again, just stunning. Aubrey Plaza there with that green flame. Like that, just visually, again, that's something right out of a comic book. I mean, it looked so perfect. But as she beckons Nikki over, then like, no, give your mom a kiss. Like, she's death. This is her job. She's not heartless. Right. So the moment that I thought it was interesting how you said, Jen, how the camera went away because Agatha wouldn't want anyone to see her cry. She also wouldn't want them to see the body of her dead child.
Yeah,
because the angle never changes. And I was like, oh man, this is heartbreaking. Because the first time I watched it, I'm like, is he just gone? Right. But then looking at it again, I'm like, oh no, he's there. His lifeless. She's literally holding his lifeless body. Again, really, really well done.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's. Oh yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was gonna say, and not to argue with John's, I get that Death and Agatha don't have the healthiest relationship, but you do sort of see that, like, from Death's perspective, it's what she said in the last episode. Like, she did give Agatha something that nobody else got. Like, she gave her time, but Agatha's also like, fuck you. You gave me, but like, then you still took him. Like, you still took my son. So like, you see why Agatha's so absolutely heartbroken and angry at Death. But you also see from Death's perspective, it's like, I told you. Yeah. Like, I told you. This is my job.
Yeah, and so that's where I was gonna chime in with Mike for sure. I feel the same way. It's like Death breaks the rules for Agatha. Like, the fact that she showed up, she should have taken the child, but she gave her time with Nick, but whatever indiscriminate time that is, and I don't know how Death does the equations in their ledger, the time came for her to take him. And so, yes, it was at night. Yes, it was without Agatha knowing it. And so in a way, it's a bit like stealing a life from Agatha, but Agatha knew she was on borrowed time with Nick the whole time. So it makes those moments even more beautiful. Look, and again, I think this is what's fascinatingly great about this series. This character is an easy character to not like, Agatha, but the performance of Catherine Hahn makes her charming and interesting. Now you've got to add this other stuff, which is her relationship with her son. We only got like 12 minutes of it in that episode, or 15 minutes, something like that, but we were invested. We liked it. The young kid who played her son worked really well. They had nice chemistry together, and they were vibing. And these really mother-son moments, you got to see another element of Agatha. And remember, Agatha comes from a pretty broken home. Her mom thought she should have been killed from birth which is a horrible existence to be in. And so we know that she's endured a lot of things. So to give her this other layer, it challenges us as a viewer to go like, well, how do I assess this person? How can I have a more rounder, less black and white approach to this person's actions? And I love that, And so by the end, when she loses her son, we are emotionally invested in that relationship and the loss. And we've only been on screen for 12 minutes. So I think that's the gift of really good writing and performance and direction as well.
Also, a really tiny thing that I noticed that really floored me as I was getting ready for bed last night is in episode 4, when they're arguing, when they realize they need a green witch. And Jen, and they're like, well, Jen's like, yeah, the witch's road, it says Coven True. And Agatha's like, no, it's Coven 2. And she's like, no, it's not. That's not the words. And you're like, oh, watching this, you're like, oh, no.
Yes.
It was Coven 2.
Yeah.
And Agatha knew that for a very specific reason. At the time, it was a funny Agatha doesn't know the words to the witch's road. And then you look back at that moment and you're like, oh, fuck. It is Coven 2. It's her and Nikki. Ugh.
And it will be Coven of 2 very soon again.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here. Agatha then spends the next few centuries. Agatha buries Nicholas in a beautiful grave that evokes what we saw Agatha be buried in at the end of episode 8. I thought that was really sweet with a green flower or green things on top there that I thought was great. But then Agatha, or purple flower rather, then Agatha spends the next few centuries robbing witches of their power in multiple centuries. I love the costumes here. All these people. I mean, there were some people from Shannon's favorite age there with exploring the little steampunk look there. So they killed all these witches and planting the myth of the witch's road. And this, because sometimes, hey, look, I think I'm an intelligent guy, but occasionally I'm thick. This is the moment I was like, oh, the witch's road has never been real. And I'm sure all of you were like, duh. But in that moment is where it finally hit me. It was never real because she's been luring these women in to be killed. So, but yes, there's no witch's road. And I thought this was a really great sequence. This is a nice montage. And then we are back in Billy's room in present day MCU to see that Agatha, who we saw laughing behind him or heard laughing behind him in episode 8, she is now a ghost. And she is full on looking like the Agatha Harkness from the comics with the gray hair and the brooch and the design. And I thought Catherine Hahn pulled this look off like crazy. She looked fantastic, kind of like Billy did, of course, in the last episode with his Wiccan outfit. She says very clearly to Billy, hey, I didn't sacrifice myself for you. And that she is still figuring out the rules of being a ghost. She tells Billy that he did something interesting with his powers, unlike his mom. Still that bitterness towards Wanda for sure, and reveals that the ballad was a con the whole time for people who are even thicker than I am. The road wasn't real until he made it real. Billy freaks out though because he now feels guilty for killing Alice, Lilia, and Sharon, and Agatha tells him that she killed Alice. And it was Lilia's choice to die, and Sharon simply doesn't matter, or she doesn't remember Sharon, which is so sad.
The gardener, the gardener lady. Right.
Right. Poor Deborah Jo Rupp. Agatha was going to kill them all in her basement. She said, full on admits that she was going to kill them. So, and then tells him, if you want to be a witch, you got to get used to this feeling of death and causing death and all this kind of stuff. And Billy's like, no, I don't agree with this. Heads down to the basement, attempts to banish her with a spell and her brooch. She tries to stop him, but can't do anything. Kind of like Patrick Swayze in Ghost when he can't move stuff yet. And then she finally breaks and admits that she can't face Nicholas, which is why she doesn't want to be banished in this way. And this seems to give her strength to knock the brooch out of Billy's hand. And Billy says to her as she's standing there trying to put the brooch on that Nicholas would forgive her because of what their relationship was. And Agatha breaks a little bit and then drops a little of the the walls and shows some vulnerability and says, when you say things like that, you remind me of him. And they seem to land on that Agatha will now be Billy's spiritual guide. I mean, or Force Ghost, everyone look at it. And Agatha tells him they could make a good team. Billy uses his magic to close the door to the witch's road. And Sharon and Alice and Lilia's names appear like a gravestone there. And then a lit staircase appears, and they are off to go and find Tommy. So, Shannon, these final scenes here leading us to possibly a season 2 or these two going on this journey in the Vision series or in the movies? What are your thoughts on these final few scenes here as we wrap up this season?
I mean, I love a montage through time, even if the time is only displayed by costuming. And so as they go through in the different centuries with the Witch's Road, like the song playing in the background. Yes, this was just a great montage. And yeah, she has killed witches for centuries to take their power, to survive. When she shows up with Billy as a ghost, I'm curious how folks that don't know, that haven't read specifically that Scarlet Witch miniseries, but I'm really curious how the non-comic book folks are going to feel about this. Like, oh, she's a ghost. Come on. But it's like, not only did we meet the ghost of her mom a few episodes earlier, but I'm like, this is comics accurate. Like, this is something that does happen. And I agree. I think in her classic Agatha look, like sporting the long gray hair, I'm like, she looks awesome. And this will be such a fun pair to use in the MCU going forward. When she tells Billy, you're going to have to get used to this feeling. She said the same thing to Nikki earlier in the episode. You're going to have to get used to this. And Billy having the agency and the age to be like, I don't want to get used to this feeling. Like, that was just awesome. The moment that, again, in the montage where she's just kind of like, well, no real witches here. You know, we couldn't conjure the door. Not on me, on you. Again, this will be so much fun on a rewatch to go back to that second episode where they do conjure the Witch's Road, because we get a little glimpse of that when the door appears in the floor, and you see great take by Catherine Hahn of just like, holy shit, it worked. Right. What is the thing that is different? That kid. Like, just great realization. This was just a very, very satisfying series. And to close on the line of dialogue of, let's go find Tommy. Like, this is, again, when the MCU does what the MCU does best. Like, you tell a satisfying story, and if it didn't end with saying, like, let's go find Tommy, you'd have been fine. Like, if it was just, you know what, we could be quite a team. Bang, blackout. The fact that they're able to tee it up. Like, I read a couple of reviews saying like, oh, this was just a big setup for Billy. It's like, F off. This was a great story where we got to conclude the Agatha's, shuffling off this mortal coil. Like, that was great. But the fact that they are able to then tee it up to get us excited and keep us interested.
Oh yeah.
To me, they did everything almost as perfectly as they can.
Yeah. I like your strong statements there, Shannon. Michael, your thoughts here? We see the bearing of Nicholas, her killing all of these witches to stay alive and stay in power. And then the ghost Agatha here and Billy come to terms with each other by the end. And they're heading off to find Tommy.
Well, first of all, I really enjoy this. Shannon, I like to sit on the fence as much as possible. McClung coming out strong in favor of Agatha all along. He's ready to coming out swinging. Don't you say this show is all about Billy. Shannon's going to come for you. I like it. Yes. Unlike John, by the time, pretty much as soon as Nikki started singing Down the Witch's Road, I was like, oh, the road's not real. But seeing this montage and going, holy shit, Agatha Harkness turned the concept of the Witch's Road into witch lore and has been using it for hundreds of years to kill. Like this, we've heard that Agatha has killed hundreds of witches. Rio has told us. Jen said, everyone says Agatha killed witches. But knowing that she used this specific song, which has been part of this entire series to do it, it's poetry. Like, it's perfect. Also, massive prop to Kristen and Bobby Lopez. I don't know that the Witch's Road hits Let It Go levels, which was probably the most banger song they've ever written. But this is going to be a Halloween song for the rest of time, and drag queens the world over are already using it a whole lot. So I have heard Witch's Road remixes. I have heard mashups. Like, this song, when you say we need a song that's going to appear over and over and over in a 9-episode series, and at the end of the series it needs to have an emotional weight to it and be tied to the entire story. This is the songwriting team you go to. It's them or Pasek and Paul. It's like one or the other, and they really brought the heat with this song. And yeah, like when you catch up at the end of the montage and Agatha's face when that door, because yeah, you get it, she called all of those witches into There's No Witches Road. She straight up tells Billy in episode 2, she's like, the Witches Road doesn't exist. He's like, that's just what witches say. She was absolutely going to take their powers the same way she did. And then that door appears. And then when you think back, this is what I fucking love. You think back to everything that Agatha said and did. When we did our review of episode 4, where it opens up with her over Mrs. Hart's body, and she says, I didn't think you had it in you. And she winks at Billy. And I remember we did the review and I was like, what did you guys think that moment meant? I didn't know what that moment meant. Right. She straight up is saying, I didn't think Billy had it in him to kill her. And he did. When she says this whole road, when he's like, this is exactly how I pictured it. Yep, it suits you. When she says, of course you're a Maximoff. This is so dramatic. Right. She's talking about the fact that just like his mom, he created an entire fucking reality to deal with his grief and what he was going through emotionally. That is when she says you have the same tell as your mom, the tell is, you're so emotional that you warped reality, asshole. Yeah. It's very inconvenient. So like you go through, even when he comes out and he's yelling at her about killing Alice, and he's like, I would never kill a witch. And her face changed. She's like, are you sure? She's like, bitch, you've been doing it the whole time. Like the context of the road never existed and it was a con until the moment it wasn't. You know, we said early on that we really questioned whether Agatha had been on the road. But what we didn't understand is not only had she never been on the road, but she was the only one that knew from moment one that none of this had ever happened before. Yeah. That there's no rule book for this because it didn't exist. So to Shannon's point, a rewatch of Agatha All Along is gold because you just get to watch Catherine Hahn's performance, verbal and nonverbal, the entire time, understanding what she understands, and it just kind of changes everything. So it's really, really amazing. And then getting back to the Billy scene with Agatha, she does look great. I will say, we talk a lot about Wizard of Oz, but the other thing that I was struck by is I think one of the greatest characters in literature is Long John Silver in Treasure Island. The reason that Long John Silver is one of the greatest characters in literature is because he is unabashedly a villain. He is a bad guy who is selfish and is going to do what he wants to do for him. And he's also Jim's mentor, and you fall in love with him as a character. And to John's point about them never kind of softening Agatha, she killed those witches for hundreds of years. You make no bones about it. And she still is kind of telling Billy, you're going to continue to kill people. Like, she's not all of a sudden a redeemed ghost who's like, I now see the error of my ways. I'm a good person. So Agatha Harkness gets to live in that literary space that Long John Silver does of, I love this character. You're a great mentor. You're teaching this person who's going to be a better person than you, but you still get to be shitty and you still get to be bad. And so I loved all of the interplay between them in this scene, and Billy's realization that he killed people. Like, I think with the end of WandaVision, it's like, I think Jack Schaefer really kind of took to heart when we were all like, it kind of felt like Wanda got off a little bit. Yeah. Granted, Marvel made her a villain in Multiverse of Madness and then dropped a mountain on her. So she got hers in the end. But, I guess. But there's like that. But like in the world of the MCU now, those Westview residents are never going to forgive Wanda. Like, you look at the graffiti on her house, like they hate the Scarlet Witch. They won't say her name. Agatha is unabashedly a villain, and Billy absolutely is going to carry those deaths through the rest of his life in the MCU. So I think having these characters that are flawed, that made these mistakes, but carry on, is really, really interesting. And then, when Billy goes to the house to sort of banish Agatha, just everything she's saying, she does every trick in the Agatha book. Like, she tries to sort of sweet talk him. She's like, hey, don't ignore me. Then she gets angry. She says, you're not going to be able to pull this off. Then he says, well, I did break the spell. And she's like, you loosened it. But then when she does knock the brooch out of his hand, and she finally has that, like, he's like, why are you still here? And she goes, because I can't face him. That, like, she does it, and this is like in the triangle of like nobody wants to die, but death has been coming for Agatha for centuries and been like, babe, come and sit on the couch with me in the afterlife. And the main reason Agatha won't go is because she doesn't want to face Nikki.
Yeah.
Like, that is beautiful. And that the fact that Billy gets that out of her, and Billy's the only one who can get that vulnerability out of Agatha. He's the only one that gets Agatha to be honest, because as she says, he reminds her so much of Nikki. So to Shannon's point, all of the people that are like, this show was just set up for Billy, sure. Like, it's the Marvel Universe. Billy is huge. Everyone's very excited about him. Everybody wants him to get reunited with Tommy. Everyone wants the Scarlet Witch to come back. But when you look at the wealth of information that we got about Agatha in this series, the relationship between her and Rio, the relationship between her and Nikki, the fact that she created the Witch's Road, like everything leading up to this moment, that now she is this mentor to Billy Maximoff in the same way that she was to Wanda in the comics. And that now, again, Shannon's right. Had they just ended the episode with the two of them, like he's like, oh, so we're a coven of two? Just like Agatha and Nikki were. And she's like, I don't know. I tend to kill people. I tend to kill witches in my coven. And he's like, so do I. Like, if they had just ended it there, it would have been like, this series is great. But then because they're Marvel, adding in that, now let's go find Tommy. Again, this is the feeling that Marvel fans want to have. I can't wait to see where this shows up. I can't wait to see how this connects. I know that White Vision is out there kind of carrying Vision's memories. I'm pretty sure the Scarlet Witch is coming back at some point. Sure, we got this whole multiverse thing happening and we've got the X-Men on the horizon, but like, this family, from the moment that Wanda and Vision appeared in Age of Ultron to Agatha and Billy Maximoff walking out of this basement to find his brother, you're like, this is A+ storytelling.
Yeah, it's kind of funny now because, you know, they call Fantastic Four the first family of Marvel, but it seems to be like, because the Fantastic Four is coming in so late, it seems like the Maximoffs might be, in a way, the first family of Marvel by accident. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I kind of like that. I prefer this family, to be honest with you. I find this family more
hold on,
interesting.
you haven't seen them yet. Pedro's coming.
I know Pedro's coming, and I'm just saying, is for me, I like this family. I like the challenging nature of this family, right? And this is important. And what struck me, because I recorded my reactions, and one of the things I said at the end is that I like the fact that this is a show that we are, as Marvel viewers, are going to have to come to these characters. In the magic world, this idea of good versus evil, it's a much more grayer situation. I mean, Doctor Strange essentially banished people to die, half of the galaxy to die, because they could turn it around 5 years later. But all these people who missed their families and went through the loss, they still carry that loss. It's not like the loss gets removed, but it's what had to be done in order for this to happen. So in the magic world, this idea of life and death is much more fluid than we feel in the more normal world. And I like that. It challenges us as a viewer. So I appreciate where this is going. And I like that they didn't cop out on it, because it's almost like a detente where Agatha says, hey, I killed a lot of people. You're going to kill. Yeah, so have I. I've killed my coven. You've killed your coven. We're at a detente. So we're good. We're going to function well as equals in that way. And so I like that. And as a guide and a counselor for Billy, going forward. So yeah, to me, really, again,
I mean, what you're talking about, which is 100% right, which is when Marvel is at their best, when you're doing these big universes, like, cause and effect is the base level of storytelling. And when you do something and then say we take it back, which a lot of movies do, particularly with magic, oh, it was a dream the whole time. Right. It wasn't really real. What Marvel did, and what they had with Tony Stark having his daughter, they made it an actual physical embodiment of, hey, it would be easy for us as a comic book company to say, all right, then the Avengers snapped and those 5 years never happened. Right. But they're like, no, like, people did have babies. People did have things happen that you don't want to take away. So having that blip exist in the MCU is a great cause and effect. In the same way, like, one of the things that's going to be very MCU specific, because it didn't happen this way in the comic books, since Agatha was actually Wanda's mentor, is whenever Wanda does come back, all Wanda wants is her kids. That is very clear. It was made very, very clear that Wanda wants those kids, just like in the comics when she remembered she had those kids, went crazy and killed a bunch of Avengers. Like, she wants those kids, but now, and also Wanda does not like Agatha.
Yeah.
Like, Wanda cursed Agatha. Agatha tried to take her kids away. Agatha is not on Wanda's good list. So for Wanda to come back from the dead and find her kids, but one of her kids has her biggest villain as his spiritual advisor, like, that's great cause and effect. That is great. This relationship is super complicated. To your point, the Maximoff family is like, if the Fantastic Four is like the Partridge family, this is like Married with Children. The Maximoffs are like the most fucked up. You're like, okay, I love you, but like, there's some drama here.
Yeah,
I was gonna say the Fantastic Four is what you want your family to be. The Maximoff is what your family is.
Yeah, exactly.
And to the gray thing you were talking about, Johnny, the dynamic between Agatha and Death, where Death's like, "This is my job. It was my job to take your kid," and Agatha's like, "I don't care. You took my kid. I have to hate you." It reminds me of Tony and Steve in Civil War, when he's just like,
he's like, my mom.
Bucky wasn't the one. He's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
He killed my mom. Like that, everyone having their distinct points of view and not wavering from that point is what makes stories interesting.
Yeah. Agreed. And look, he's looking for Tommy. He's not looking for his mom. So that's going to be an interesting thing when that pops up as well. Because a lot of people were upset that Wanda didn't show up at the end. He didn't want to. Their relationship with him and Tommy is stronger than his relationship with his mom. And that is going to be interesting, as you said, Michael, because Wanda and Agatha clearly don't like each other. I think Agatha likes Wanda more than Wanda likes Agatha. So this is going to be a fascinating thing when they all come back together and those conversations. Get a good writer to write those conversations.
Well, and what's going to be interesting, I mean, a lot of people are hoping that whether it be in a Scarlet Witch movie or in a Wiccan series or in a Tommy series or whatever, a lot of people are hoping that they adapt the Children's Crusade, which from the Marvel comics is the Young Avengers story. And that's the Young Avengers story where Wanda's been gone post killing a bunch of Avengers, doing House of M, and then wiping out most of the mutant population. And like the Avengers and the X-Men are all like, we got to kill Wanda. And Billy in the Young Event, Billy's the only one who's like, no, this is my mom. I believe in her. And like, he goes on this whole journey to find her. So I know a lot of people are kind of wanting that, but this Billy in the MCU is not there yet.
Yeah.
This Billy doesn't, like, even Agatha says, he's like, oh, one of the ways you're more interesting than your mom. Sorry, Wanda. Like, to Billy, Wanda's not his mom. Wanda is this Avenger who was the Scarlet Witch, who, as far as he can tell, terrorized the people of Westview and put them all under a spell, and then created him and Tommy and then let them die. Like, he doesn't understand what her motivations were. So I'm hoping that part of the journey, and I do think it's probably most likely to happen in Vision Quest. I know Terry Metalis is running it now, but Jacques Schaefer was attached to it originally. Yeah, and Brad Wunderbaum has already come out and said that Jacques Schaefer and Terry Metalis have been talking, and it's like, if part of the journey of finding Tommy is Billy also finding Vision, who is now trying to put the pieces together because he has all of original Vision's memories, and that Billy and Tommy both learn this is why our mom did what she did. Like, and then after that all happens, it's like, okay, well, now we have the power to go bring her back. Let's go find mom, which hopefully they fight Rio for, because bringing someone back from the dead, probably not really what Rio's excited about.
Yeah, not a fan of it for sure. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review of episodes 8 and 9 of Agatha All Along, wrapping up this season of Agatha All Along. We don't know, as I said, if there's going to be a season 2, so we'll just say this season. Really fantastic stuff. Kudos to everybody involved with the show. I think all three of us can say and feel that for sure, and it was an enjoyable show, so we appreciate you all going on our own witches road with us as we reviewed all the episodes here, ending up here at the end. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's @geek_buddies. On Instagram, at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is @NKToon. If you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is @the Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Go ahead and smash that like button below. Subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page. Check out all the amazing content that he has got there. Leave your comments below. I know you got a lot of them. Do you think they stuck the landing? Do you love it? Do you hate it? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? What are you excited about is happening next? What do you think of all the Marvel TV shows that are coming out? Because we're going to have a very, very busy 2025 reviewing all of those shows, and we hope you are with us all the way. If you are listening to us on a podcast, go ahead and leave us some stars and comments so we go up in the rankings there. And as always, the best thing you can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. Thank you all so much. Enjoy your weekend. Don't forget, we'll have a main show coming out at some point, but enjoy your weekend in the meantime, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode or spoiler review here on Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek
Buddies!